Hotel on the corner of Bitter and Sweet. Chapter 6. The Walk Home. The year is 1942. A week after Keiko arrived, Henry had settled into a new routine. They'd have lunch together, then meet by the janitor's closet after school for the second part of their work duties. Side by side, they'd clean the chalkboards, empty waste baskets, and pound erasers behind the school on an old stump. It wasn't bad. Having Keiko around cut the work he'd previously been doing in half, and he enjoyed the company, even if she was Japanese. Besides, all the work after school gave the other kids plenty of time to get on their bikes or their buses and be on their way long before he stepped out onto the schoolyard. That was how it was supposed to work. But today, as he held the door for Keiko when they left the building, Chaz was standing at the bottom of the steps. He must have missed his bus, Henry thought. Or maybe he'd sensed a murmur of happiness since Keiko had arrived. Just a glance or a smile between them. Even if he's here to show me up, Henry thought, that's fine, as long as he doesn't hurt her. He and Keiko walked down the steps and past Chaz, Henry on the inside, putting himself between her and the bully. As they descended, Henry became all too aware that his nemesis was a whole foot taller than either one of them. Where do you think you're going? Chaz should have been in a higher grade, but he'd been held back, twice. Henry had long suspected he'd failed on purpose so he could continue to lord over his sixth grade kingdom. Why give that up to be an eighth grade nobody? I said, where do you think you're going, Jap lover? Keiko was about to speak when Henry shot her a look, put his arm around her, and kept her walking. Chaz stepped in front of them. I know you understand every word I'm saying. I've seen you two talking after class. So? Henry said. So? Chaz grabbed him by his collar and jerked him up to his chest. So close Henry could smell his lunch, onions and powdered milk, still ripe on his breath. How about I make it so you can't talk anymore? How would you like that? Stop it, Keiko shouted. Leave the kid alone, Charlie, Mrs. Beatty interrupted, walking down the steps, lighting a cigarette. Judging by her nonchalance, Henry figured she was used to Chaz's lapses in behavior. My name is Chaz. Well, Chaz, honey, if you hurt that kid, you're going to be taking his place in the kitchen. You understand me? She said it in a way that almost sounded like she cared. Almost. The hard look on her face put just enough doubt in Chaz's mind. He let go, shoving Henry to the ground, but not before ripping the button that read, I am Chinese, off Henry's shirt, leaving a small tear. Chaz pinned it on his own collar and gave Henry a buck-toothed smile before finally wandering off, presumably to find other kids to rough up. Keiko helped Henry up, handing him his bucks. When he turned to thank Mrs. Beatty, she was well on her way, not even a goodbye. Thanks anyway. Did she care about playground bullying, or was she just protecting her kitchen help? Henry couldn't tell. He dusted off the seat of his pants and wiped the thought from his mind. After their week in the kitchen together, he hadn't thought he could actually feel any more frustration or embarrassment. What a surprise. But if Keiko thought less of him after their run-in with Chaz, it certainly didn't show. She even touched his hand, offering hers as they walked, but he ignored it. He wasn't really shy around girls. A Japanese girl, though, that was a red flag. Or a white flag with a big red sun on it, as it were. My father would fall over dead, he thought. And in town, someone could see us. Have you always gone to Rainier? She asked. He noticed how cool her voice sounded, clear and simple. Her English was much better than that of most of the Chinese girls he knew. He shook his head. Just in September. My parents want me to get a Western education, university, instead of going back to Canton for my Chinese schooling like all the other kids in my neighborhood. Why? He didn't know how to say it. Because of people like you. As the words came out, he felt bad for venting the day's frustrations. But part of it was true, wasn't it? Out of the corner of his eye, he watched her undo the ribbon in her hair. Long black strands fell around her face, bangs almost covering her chestnut eyes. I'm sorry. It's not your fault. It's because the Japanese army has invaded the northeastern provinces. The fighting is a long way from Canton, but they still won't let me go. Most of the kids on my side of town all go to the Chinese school, then finish back in China. That's what my father always planned for me. Until last fall, anyway. Henry didn't know what else to say. So you weren't born in China? He shook his head again, pointing to First Hill, where Columbus Hospital stood on the outskirts of Chinatown. I was born right up there. She smiled. That's where I was born too. I'm Japanese, but American first. Did your parents teach you to say that? He bit his words as they came out, afraid of hurting her feelings again. After all, his parents told him to say the same thing. Yes, they did. My grandfather came over right after the Great Fire in '89. I'm second generation. Is that why they sent you to Rainier? They had walked past the black iron arches of Chinatown all the way to Nihonmachi. Henry lived 7 blocks over and had been here only once, when his father had to meet someone for lunch at the Northern Pacific Hotel at the edge of the Japanese marketplace. Even then, father had insisted they leave once he found out the place had been built by Niroku Frank Shitame, a local Japanese businessman. They were gone before their food even arrived. No, she stopped and looked around. This is why they send me. Everywhere he looked, he saw American flags, in every shop window and hanging from every door. Yet many more shops had broken windows, and a few were boarded up completely. In front of them, an orange public works lift truck blocked 3 parking spaces. A bearded man in the bucket was taking down the sign for Mikado Street and replacing it with one that read Dearborn Street. Henry remembered the button his father had given him and touched the torn fabric over his heart where it had been. He looked at Keiko, and for the first time all day, the first time all week, she looked afraid.